What is up, and welcome to Three and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on a Friday afternoon. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. We are glad to be with you. We'll hear from Christian Gokel, Cody Queen as well. We are glad to have you as we get ready for a big weekend and a lot to get to on the show. Needless to say, after a tough stretch, we'll talk some Atlanta Braves baseball, Braves and Brewers coming up this weekend, a big series leading into early next week where the Atlanta Braves will take on the division-leading New York Mets. We'll also talk some college football on the show, continue the conversation about, Ben, what does it take to kind of create a national title contender? Does Georgia at this point have the look and feel of a national title contender? We'll talk about that. Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily, will join us. Is Georgia's offense, quite frankly, good enough to win a national championship? When you think about what you have coming back, obviously no George Pickens, JT Daniels. Can he be that elite top-tier quarterback? So we'll chat with Brooks about that. We'll share an interview, a powerful interview with you with Marcus Murphy of the Falcons, a young man who's trying to make an NFL team, lost his mother, unfortunately, has a son with a health condition. So we'll hear his perspective. We'll reshare that with you coming up in the final hour. A lot to get to on the program. Again, BJ Bennett here with you alongside Ben Troop. And Ben, the Atlanta Braves, when you talk about kind of where they are, I think most people, even Kevin, would probably tell you a little bit of a disappointment right now where they are. 17-20 right now, 3 games out of first place, 3 games under 500. You got swept by Toronto again, by the Blue Jays again. This is a team that is better, I think, than they've shown, but injuries all over the place. But let me ask you this about injuries. Are you more concerned that the Braves just got swept by Toronto, or are you more grateful that Ronald Acuna is okay, going to be day-to-day after what was a scary situation where he fell down after, I guess, running out of play and hit first base kind of weird, came down kind of weird, and it looks like after some initial concern and fear about what could be an extended injury, he's only going to be out a couple of days.
Oh, you definitely agree with a sigh of relief. I mean, the thing about Ronald Acuna, he's the heart and soul of this team. He's the guy that's definitely been the only consistent thing, BJ, since the start of the season. And, yeah, I mean, it's obviously going to be a concern when you look at what the Braves aren't doing as a team, because it used to be, you could point to maybe it's the starting lineup, maybe it's the pitch, maybe the starting pitcher, maybe it's the bullpen. It's all those things at once, but it's always good to know that when you see him, Ronald Acuna Jr. is going to be day to day, ankle injury. That's much better than he's going on the DL. We are already still waiting patiently to see when Mike Soroka's coming back. I mean, he's obviously had a setback, with his Achilles situation. So this Braves team, BJ, gonna have to figure it out in a hurry. I mean, I know you always talking about how, all the games count the same. And this Braves team was a team that I don't think lost a series last year. When you look at what, the type of offensive firepower that they have, one of the best lineups in baseball, we thought that the starting pitching was going to be a plus, and you always got to deal with that bullpen. But it seems though everything is going in the wrong direction, in a hurry. I mean, you go back, yesterday when you look at the fact that this is a Braves team that was tied 4-4, going into the ninth, and then to kind of get away from them. They're gonna have to figure it out. The thing about being a pro is, it's all between the ears. You're gonna have to figure it out. Nobody's gonna feel sorry for a Braves team that's won the National League East 3 years in a row. I know that high expectations sometimes, lead to a more of a stress level on these players, but the usual suspects ain't getting it done. I mean, Freddie Free ain't getting it done right now. Ozzie, he's always up and down. Marcel seems to be a guy that he's either on or not. I just think that because the bullpen is what it is right now, or lack thereof, and you can't get consistency from the starting pitching, it's going to have to come from this lineup, because if it doesn't, I think that's the only boost that this team they used to be able to look forward to. That seems to be a thing of the past now.
Well, and injuries have made matters worse. I mean, you're right about that. And Christian Pache going to be out. You do have Ender Inciarte coming back. I think all the Braves country is very thankful that Ronald Acuna, needless to say, his injury situation, if you even want to call it that, is not more dramatic than it is. Again, day to day, I don't necessarily know what that means in terms of the next couple of days, but you'll see Ronald Acuna back very soon in some form or fashion. But you talk about the injuries, you're going to have to rely on the bench even more. Mike Soroka's situation that Kevin talked about earlier this week is concerning. When you figure that, I think most people anticipated he was going to be back by now, and now we just don't know. I mean, exploratory surgery, you don't know. You've had some guys who were hurt come back. Sean Newcomb is back in the bullpen. The bullpen itself, and I'll give you credit, man. You've been worried about the bullpen all preseason, all offseason when you didn't re-sign some guys, and this is a group that has not been very good. Will Smith, obviously a bad day yesterday. You think about AJ Minter. He's had kind of a rough stretch. Josh Tomlin, rough stretch. We'll see what Chris Martin's role becomes as he's now back from injury like Newcomb. What is his role going to be? Shane Green, when will we see him? In your mind, is this something where you can kind of make it work until you get Shane Green in? Or is this a situation where if you're Brian Snitker, you're looking at it and going, I'm rethinking who my closer is now. I'm rethinking who I trust in the 8th inning now. And even if that means going with kind of new roles, I have to make a change.
I think you got to exhaust all possibilities, BJ. I mean, Will Smith probably makes the things, far worse than it has to be because you knew while everybody else you bring him in situation, you knew what Will Smith was paid to do and he hasn't been getting it done. I mean, AJ Minter, Shane Green, Sean Newcomb, these guys are fill-ins. Will Smith was supposed to be, kind of like that key cog when you look at what he was able to do. Hasn't been able to get it done. And the thing is, we used to been able to score enough runs that the bullpen just don't lose the game for us. Now, I mean, yesterday was a prime example. I mean, the Braves battled back, to tie the game 4-4, and it just gets away from you in a hurry. So I do know that Snit is well, I will say this. With everything Snit has had to deal with, he's been used to dealing with a bullpen, BJ, that's been shaky. Even with them winning the NL East the last 3 years, you still had to deal with a shaky bullpen. But it makes everything worse when nothing's going well. The bullpen being bad with everything else being good is an easier decision to deal with. Now you're trying to shuffle guys that, I mean, nowadays everybody Kevin's always telling me everybody comes with a certain specialization. They specialize in this, specialize in that. Well, what you specialize in, you ain't getting that done. Then what does Snit do? I just think that they're going to have to find a way to get it done. You can't escape that bullpen. And BJ, you got starters that don't even make it to the 6th inning anymore. They barely make it out to the 3rd and the 4th inning. That's putting more pressure on all those guys. They're going to have to – the bullpen, because it's more of a collection of guys, you would think that one of those guys would work out. They seem to all not to be getting it done, but they're going to have to once again get it going in a hurry because, I mean, this schedule is only getting more brutal as in the coming days. And dare I say, if these batters can't get it going and these starters can't make it to the 6th inning, BJ, we're going to be looking at a long losing streak in a team that's doing all this can to save face right before they get to the All-Star break.
And I think you're right about the starters. And I want to make a parallel baseball to football because I've heard you say time and time again that when a secondary is struggling in football, look at the defensive line. Are they getting pressure? Are the edge rushers getting pressure? And if they're not, well, cornerbacks and safeties can only do so much. And I do think there's a parallel to baseball when you think about where the Braves are from a pitching staff perspective. Your starters have not been good. When you think about Drew Smiley, ERA over 6, Max Fried, ERA over 6, Charlie Morton, ERA over 5. Obviously, no Soroka. Ian Anderson's been pretty good. Huascar Ynoa has been amazing. But for the most part, you've had guys, like you say, struggle to get to the 4th to the 5th inning, and the impact that has on a bullpen night in and night out. I know Kevin's talked about AJ Minter's usage. I think that's significant. And yes, you can look at the bullpen and say, collectively, you've not been good enough. Individually, some of you guys have really struggled. But I think the poor performances at large by the starters have kind of led to that and made it worse. So when you talk about needing improvement on the mound, I think it's everybody. I think it's, yes, the bullpen, but it has to start, for lack of a better word, with the starters. Ben Anderson chiming in on Facebook saying maybe it's time to blame Snitker. Ben, your perspective, I mean, is this injuries and it's too early to get into any of the blame this guy or that guy talk, or do you think some of that might be fair?
It is fair. I mean, you should blame yourself. I mean, at the end of every game, you got to ask yourself, did I do enough today to help us win the game? Point blank, period. It doesn't matter. Before I can start looking outwardly, I got to ask myself, what did I do? And the best teams play complementary, baseball, basketball, football. It's complementary. So the thing about the it's not so much that the starters going into the 6th, you taking less pressure off the bullpen. But if you're getting pulled in the 4th, well, I'm getting called out quicker than I thought I would be. Then it puts more pressure on me to perform because you didn't perform. The whole notion of whatever you resist persists, BJ, that happens in sports more than anything. As long as you resist being good, we will be bad. as a team, because even if you're not everybody doesn't have the same role. Everybody doesn't have, everybody's not a key contributor until you decide to be. So if I'm saying, all right, I might come in for 6 pitches. It got to be my best 6. I can't be walking people. I can't be hitting people. I can't be giving up hits. If I'm a reliever, if I'm a bench player, if I'm a starter, I got to give us a chance. That way, by the time we go to the bench, that guy's running out with confidence. If that guy's running out and they down 3 runs, what type of confidence is he gonna have getting on the mound? So I do think that complimentary play is always better for the greater collective, because nobody is that good. And when I'm the best player on the team, but I can have a down day and we can win, that's a good team. But when I got to play well to even give us a shot, that's a lot of stress. And I think that's what a guy like Freddie Freeman is going through right now, trying to live up to the MVP status of last year. But I think this team got to get it going in a hurry, because this NL East, BJ, you know how hard it's going to be. The Mets, I mean, they about to go see these guys real quick. They're going to have to find a way to get it done, because, look, I give sympathy to people that need it. I don't give it to pro sports players. Y'all the best in the world. You got whatever it took to get here. It takes that even more to stay here. Them boys are going to have to find a way, or dare I say, BJ, is going to continue to be ugly, because it's already ugly right now.
I think it's a big stretch coming up, and I think it's okay to be critical and understand that your criticism is coming in mid-May. So you're not saying, hey, you got to get it together right now or the season's over. You got to start playing better. And I think this is a big stretch, but I also think it's okay to say it's been a disappointment to date. Run differential. The only teams in the National League with a worse run differential than the Braves are the Pirates and the Rockies. So that kind of gives you a frame of reference for where Atlanta's been. And I know Kevin was talking about, could this be an opportunity for the staff to get right, because Milwaukee has not been very good at the plate. I think you got to take advantage of that, and you need some momentum. Not only do you need momentum just in terms of the race. I said the Braves were 3 games out. That's wrong. They're 4 games out in the National League East, and you want to try to stem that tide a little bit. But you also need to get some momentum and confidence, to use your word, going before you play the Mets. I mean, the Mets early next week, that's who you'll play. The Mets are 8-2 in their last 10. So you don't want to be kind of stumbling into that series against a team that maybe thinks, hey, if we take 2 out of 3 or sweep you, we can push you way back. You need to get some wins against Milwaukee and have that confidence going into a key series against the Mets. But Ben, from a pro athlete standpoint, can you manufacture confidence? How do you create it when you're not playing well?
Start using pressure the right way. I mean, that's the only way I think you can manufacture confidence. I mean, pressure, you either apply it or you feel it. I think right now the Braves look like they feeling it. They got to start applying it, and maybe that applying pressure will come, you will manufacture that confidence. It ain't going to happen, all at once, but, 1% becomes 5, 5 becomes 10, because if you in the NL East, you want nothing more than to see your opponents struggling. And if you the Braves, 4 games can become 6, and then you spend the whole season trying to battle back. Try to just get 1 win. And hopefully the snowball. You can't get that 4 win, being 4 games back in one day, but try to get 1 win and hopefully the snowball, but you start using pressure the right way.
Well, and Cody mentions that after the weekend in Wisconsin, 7 straight home games after that. So a big stretch coming up, a chance to get right. Need to win some games this weekend. We'll have Braves and Brewers a little bit later. We'll come back and talk college football next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. A lot of talk about the college football playoff, the evolution potentially of the college football playoff, even as we're here in the offseason. And Ben, wanted to get your thoughts on a topic that was talked about a little bit by new ACC commissioner Jim Phillips, who says he wants a, quote, thorough assessment, end quote, of the college football playoff and expansion before making any decisions. And he goes on to talk about, hey, look, I'm not against it. I want to have the conversation. I just want us to do it thoughtfully. I don't want to just rush into it and say, yes, we have to expand. And he goes on to talk about how the bowl system is worth saving, can't turn a blind eye to that. Your thoughts, how do we move forward in college football with potential expansion of a playoff field that I think most people want? I don't know that that's always been the case. I think most people want that now. But how do you do that while maintaining, I guess, the value of the bowl games and I guess making sure that you expand in a thoughtful manner, to use Commissioner Phillips' thoughts?
I mean, addition by addition. I mean, if 8 teams get in, if it goes from 4 to 8, that means you're going to have 4 teams that wouldn't have made a bowl game get a chance to make a bowl game. You're not losing anything. We always talking about, BJ, how do we get it to where all P5 teams get a chance to be in the college football playoff, as well as those G5 teams that automatic qualifiers, on top of the fact that we need to stop judging conferences on the best teams in the conference. If you're Vanderbilt, right, and just say you get the 5 wins, and they got these automatic bowl tie-ins to these cities, you should make a bowl game. Bowl, I mean, your overall record doesn't matter when you make a bowl game. People, they only went 6 and 6. Who cares? The hardest thing to do in college.
No, that is true, though. That is true, though, because when you look back at your favorite team and kind of what they do, you don't say, oh, well, we went 9-3 or 8-4. You either made a bowl game, you made a really good bowl game, you made a second-tier bowl game, or you didn't make a bowl game. You don't remember the record necessarily.
Absolutely. And BJ, if we really judge, what is the hardest thing to do in college football? Make it to 6 wins. And I'm not talking about the usual suspects. I'm talking about the ones who, like BJ, the schedule coming out, we're counting wins. They're looking at who it is. Like, well, we ain't going to beat them. It's not going to be that. I think it's a good thing. Number one, I think it is going to go to 4 to 8. I do think that's a good thing, but I don't think there are enough bowl games, because people always ask, look, you got 130 Division I schools. You got P5, G5, you got NAIA, you got HBCU. You got a lot of different games, a lot of different teams. A bowl game is reward for the season. It might not be the season you wanted or the record that you wanted, but there's something to say that you made it to a bowl game. There are people that went to college for 4 years that played in these, quote, big-time conferences, never made a bowl game. They're like, dude, I wouldn't know anything about that. So I do think that the commissioner, ACC commissioner, Jim Phillips he's on, I think he's on to something, because, number one, it makes it so that 4 teams that would not have made a bowl game will get a chance to play in a bowl game. And you doing, BJ, what I think is eventually going to have to happen, and that's 8 teams in the college football playoffs. You got too many. Me and you was talking earlier about how many teams in the SEC not gonna win it, but have a chance to be in the college football playoff. I mean, you got Florida and Georgia in the East. You got Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. In the West. That's 5 teams. Most ACC is only gonna give you 1 that can win it, but North Carolina, as well as Miami, can make it. So this makes it so that the field, the Pac-12, they get a chance to be in it. But yeah, BJ, I think it's always good to have more bowl games. I do think that people don't understand what a bowl game means. When people talk about culture and exposure, that's the only time you really get it when you're in college. Because when you fly into these cities to play these teams, you get off the plane, you go to the hotel, you play the next day. But when I went to Miami, when I went to New Orleans, when I went to Tampa, and I'm out and about in the community, oh, okay, this is what you mean to the people that root for you. So I do think that essentially, bowl games are more important than the Natty, because the Natty is only going to be 2 teams. You're going to have a plethora of teams to get a chance to play in these bowl games. So yeah, expand it to 8. That way, 4 new teams get a chance to experience the bowl game. Because I don't judge the SEC on the teams that I played for. I judge it on the Vanderbilt players and the Kentucky players and the Arkansas players of the world who say to themselves, dude, we trying to not go over and only count the teams that's out of conference, because you know how it is, BJ, man. We are spoiled. Our teams usually do well, but my team didn't make a bowl game, and I realized how precious that was when we didn't. So I know that I don't want to get caught up in who can win it all. I just want to be able to leave my little town for 1 week out of the year.
And bowl games aren't going anywhere. They're an important part of college football. And I think, people look forward to bowl season, whether it's, early December, mid-December, carrying through. Sometimes there are games that go, the playoffs now, but even other bowl games that go into kind of early January beyond just the first or second. And I think people look forward to it every year. It's an important part of college football history and tradition and pageantry. And I agree with Commissioner Phillips. You don't want to totally disregard that. I don't think expanding the playoff field some is going to disregard that. I think people will still care about bowl games. People will still go to bowl games, and maybe you incorporate a couple of the more tradition-rich bowl games and make them the extra playoff games, or you rotate through or something like that. But yeah, bowl games matter. Bowl games are important. And I know people joke sometimes, there are too many bowl games. Well, I think a lot of teams are seeing how hard it is to get to 6-6 these days, much less 7 wins, 8 wins. And I think it's a good thing. We're going to watch college football. It's a good opportunity for the student athletes to have an extra, chance to travel, exposure, all like that, practices, the team for next year, young players getting the extra opportunities. I think bowl games are a good thing. And I don't think if you suddenly expand the playoff that people aren't going to care. Yes, the playoff is the focal point, obviously. But like you said, back before the playoff, the national championship was the focal point. There was only one game that determined a champion. We still paid attention to the games that led up to that. I do agree that expansion is inevitable, and I think it's necessary. College football made a big jump when it changed to the playoff, but in reality, you didn't create a playoff format that was reflective of the system you have. You have 5 Power 5 conferences and 4 playoff slots. And that doesn't even include, the group of 5 conferences. So you have to have a more representative tournament, a more representative format. You see larger playoff fields, obviously, at the Division I FCS level, at the Division II level, at the Division III level, et cetera. So I think it certainly can be done. And look, I appreciate not wanting to just kind of turn your back on the bowl games and say, these don't matter. We're only focused on the playoff. Of course, the playoff is the starting point. The Final Four, in basketball, that's where you want to be. But that doesn't mean the other games don't. I think that you will still see a passion and appreciation for bowl games, even if you expand the field. And I think that expansion has to come. Look, college football you have to have more than 4 teams. Look at the playoff. Look at the Power 5 conferences, the conferences as a whole, the rise of the G5. It's time to expand this thing.
We'll see, BJ. We'll see. I like it. Anytime we talk expansion, I'm all for it. And like I said, I just got a different outlook on when I'm thinking about bowl games now, because I'm looking at the totality of a thing, not just from this one-sided, privileged position I was in because of the team that I played for. When you get to the National Football League, guys are saying, "Hey man," they asking you where you played and what bowl game, and you start hearing, "Oh no, we never made a bowl." You start hearing that, and you start placing more prestige on it. I think about it. When I went to the University of Florida, I knew about the teams in the conference. I never knew that I would get to spend a week in New Orleans, get to spend a week in Miami, get to spend a week in, things of that nature, because that stuff is important. Yes, I would have loved to have played in the national championship, but my senior year, it came down to us going to the Outback Bowl or the Peach Bowl, and our coach, the great Ron Zook, chose the Outback. And he told us that. He said, "Well, listen, we could have went to the Peach, but y'all didn't want to go to Atlanta, did you? And you should have just seen our faces. So let me get this straight. You want to bring us back to the same hotel to play a different team in the same bowl a year later when we could have went to Atlanta? Come on, man." But like I said, BJ, I play. To me, the bowl game season is like the football version of the NCAA tournament, because you're seeing teams you don't see, you're hearing about players you didn't know about, and some of these guys are really, really good. The first time I heard of Saquon Barkley and Sam Darnold was in the Rose Bowl, and they put on a show, and they just happened to be the number 2 and number 3 picks, in the draft, that next year. So yeah, bowl game season, I'm all for it. Add some more bowl games, not because I want you to add them, but because Kevin Thomas can't stand them. But Kevin Thomas don't understand there is prestige in college, and it is known as bowl season. If you don't know, now you know.
Boy, he does get mad when the teams that are 500 or not a 5-7 team getting it. He doesn't like that. A lot of people don't, but the bowl games aren't going anywhere. We'll come back. In terms of the college football playoff, what do you have to have? What do you have to kind of have on your roster to be a national title favorite? We'll get into that next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Preseason college football polls coming out all over the place, and you think about kind of who the preseason favorites are. No big surprise, mostly the same teams, and I think that's a consensus around college football. We've been talking the last few days about kind of what the traits or characteristics are of a championship team. BJ Bennett here with Ben Troop. We bring in Christian Gokel, and Christian, I know you guys were talking about it on Second Down. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. In your mind, is it kind of starting in with offensive playmakers in today's college football?
I think what we're talking about here is the top 6-7 teams in college football, right? Because we can pretty much identify, and it stinks that it's this way. I know you guys are just talking about playoff expansion, but we can pretty much identify at the beginning of the year 7 to 8 teams that are the only legitimate teams that have a shot of winning the national championship. We haven't had really that dark horse come out of nowhere yet that had a shot at winning. I know like Michigan State and Washington have made the college football playoff, but we saw how those went. So we know who the teams are, but inside of those teams, what's the difference between the ones that have gone and the ones that have won? And I did the math, and just over the past 5 years, it basically comes down to you have to have a first-round pick at quarterback. You have to have at least one, more often than not, you need 2 first-round picks at wide receiver, and then you need a first-round pick at running back. And that's just the bare minimum where you have to start for your team if you're going to win a national championship. I know you got a lot into the defensive side of the ball, BJ, where like you don't have to be the number 1 defense in the country, but you have to be situationally explosive and be able to get a lot of tackles for losses and sacks and key turnovers. But I mean, I think we saw the switch with Nick Saban, and now the rest of college football is following suit. Is gone are the days where you can line up in the I formation, pound the ball, and play great defense, because that can work for you 14 games and get you all the way there. But when you get to the 15th game and the other team has an amazing offense and you have to play keep up, you can't do that when you haven't done it all year. And that's why we have seen the Clemsons and the Alabamas and the LSUs, who LSU was really the last team to do it outside of Georgia. I mean, think what LSU was in Joe Burrow's junior year. They were still lining up under center and running the ball with a fullback. So I'm just looking at what has won the past 5 years, and it's explosive, dominant talent on offense.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point about the positional balance too, because sometimes I think people sometimes overstate a little bit the passing attack without appreciating the corresponding running attack. Because you look at what we've seen the last couple of years. Obviously, the offenses at large as a whole are in a new place. The statistical records reflect that. You've seen basically a new single season passer rating record every single year the last couple of years. But let's not forget that Alabama wins a national championship with their all-time leading rusher, Najee Harris. Let's not forget that Travis Etienne, obviously one of the most proficient players in history, helping Clemson. So I agree with you. I mean, Ben, in your mind, is this considerably different than when you played in the SEC?
I mean, I would say yes. I mean, the thing about it is too. I mean, you got to look at who's getting the opportunities too. I mean, it's going to be these. I mean, you look at recruiting rankings, right, Christian. It's going to be those teams that's going to have a chance to be in the national championship because it's a talent threshold. Now, I look at it a different way. The last 5 years, this is how it has been. I'm looking at who's going to be the exception to say, okay, I don't have to have a first round quarterback because the thing is, I go back to what Joe Burrow was in 2019. If he comes out of 2018, obviously it wasn't the same team. I mean, this is the same Joe Burrow that threw a pick 6 against Florida the year before. Now, for 1 year, they put it together. And Mac Jones, something we was talking about. That infrastructure was already put in place. I mean, the fact that you had the Heisman Trophy winner at receiver and you had the all-time leading rush in Alabama history, at running back, those type of things help. So I do agree that the path to winning is through the offense. I give you that, Christian, every time. But I also be thinking this is where guys ended up because Mac Jones benefited from the fact that New England Patriots had a first round pick. He went first round, and he was incredible. I just think that the main thing is it's the culture because LSU, what they did in 2019, right? They hadn't beat Alabama in what? 7 years, but for that one magical year, they put it together. I just think that when it comes to the national championship, I look at it like this. If your team is good enough talent-wise to beat Alabama, you got a chance to win it. because every team, some way, shape, or form, had to deal with Alabama, whether that was in the college football playoff or that was in the national championship. I just think that when you constructing your team, you got to say, is my quarterback good enough to go with his defense? Is my running back? Is my offensive line? Because, Christian, when you go back to that national championship with Georgia, they played Alabama the Alabama way. They made it ugly. And Tua wasn't Tua when he came in. He became Tua the years after. But I just think that it's the football way of, if my team meets the talent threshold to go blow for blow or player for player with the best team in college football, I think we got to try to win.
I don't know if I inherently agree with you have to have the culture to win a national championship, because Auburn fired their coach 2 years after they won the national championship, and the only reason they won that national championship is because they had the player in Cam Newton. LSU, Ed Orgeron and the team last year was atrocious, and it's because they lost so much. I think the only team that has shown that they can withstand losing players like that is Alabama, but they're the exception to the rule. You say that all the time, Ben. There's the rule and there's the exception.
Yeah.
Alabama's the exception. You cannot look at them as reality. That's Alabama. But in terms of culture, I think culture is developed by winning. I think more so you have to be able to develop the players. And I think Alabama has done that better than anybody. Georgia has quote unquote, beaten Alabama in the recruiting rankings a few of the past 4 or 5 years, but actually getting them in and developing them and getting the most out of them, Alabama has been better than anyone in the country. But I'd also give credit to LSU because they developed Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, guys who weren't the hottest recruited wide receivers in the country, and turned them both into first-round picks, right? I think a lot of it's player development, but in terms of the quote-unquote culture with the team, I think Alabama's Alabama. Everyone else, you just have to strike while the iron's hot, and that's why I look at a team like Florida. They had an unbelievable offense last year, and you missed out on it because you couldn't stop Alabama and because you threw a shoe. And now you're looking at kind of a regression this year versus Alabama's up there every single year.
Yeah, but my thing is this. Culture is not just one thing. Like, culture is supposed to be built behind winning, right? I think culture is built behind what you're chasing. Like, Florida was chasing Georgia. So the team they needed to beat, they beat them. And Georgia is chasing Alabama. Georgia is not chasing Florida. So I think what you're chasing, Christian, has a lot to do with because look, I think a lot of coaches are good just because you ain't winning. You got some good coaches out there, but the barometer is Alabama. That's what makes it rough, right? Like, the culture is going to be different. The culture in Athens ain't going to be the same, culture in Tuscaloosa or Auburn or Gainesville. Don't mean you ain't got a culture. Georgia has a winning culture. You have seen it. Didn't Kirby Smart lose one game in the regular season like 3 years in a row? They have a winning culture, but that barometer is in Tuscaloosa.
Well, I think what you're looking at, if we want to talk about Georgia, and this is really where I got the thought from, was I was looking at PFF's rankings of their top returning player position by position, and the only position group that Georgia has anybody ranked, period, is on the offensive line. You don't have a defensive lineman ranked. You don't have a linebacker ranked. You don't have a member in the secondary ranked. And I think some of that's questionable, but specifically on the offensive side of the ball, right? According to PFF, you do not have a top 10 returning quarterback coming back. You don't have a top 10 wide receiver coming back. You did, but he got hurt. You don't have a top 10 running back coming back. There were 0 Georgia running backs in the top 10, according to PFF, of returning running backs in college football. When was the last time, and this is if this all holds true, when was the last time you saw a national champion that didn't have a top 10 quarterback, didn't have a top 10 receiver, and didn't have a top 10 running back?
Yeah, I think some of that is hard to project, though, because keep in mind when we evaluate that, we do so in retrospect. And I think Ben kind of touched on this a little bit. This time last year, I think a lot of people said, wow, Mac Jones is going to be the starting quarterback at Alabama. He's going to do good things because he's at Alabama. Not necessarily.
Don't in that group, because I've been writing for Mac Jones.
Right. But around the country, there were some people who thought he might not even be the starter. You go back to Joe Burrow. I remember on this show at the end of Joe Burrow's first year at LSU, and I don't remember who I was arguing with, exclusively, but I remember saying, hey, people are wanting to bench Joe Burrow. No, look at how he finished his sophomore year in Baton Rouge. It was really impressive. But remember, Joe Burrow's first year at LSU, he got shut out at home by Alabama. They didn't score. So going into Joe Burrow's signature season, it's not like everybody thought he was going to be this Heisman Trophy winner. A lot of people thought he was going to be benched. So I think some of it is kind of retroactive in nature, where it's like if a team rises to a national championship level, especially given college football that we know it's going to be one of 4 or 5 teams. It's not like you're going to have some, like you said, outlier come in. You know that it's going to be from a team that obviously has elite talent. You know it's going to be from a team that obviously has 5 stars everywhere. And if that team rises to the number 1 spot in the polls, yeah, their quarterback, their wide receivers, their running backs are going to be productive, proficient, and they're going to go in the first round. And I do agree with Ben to a certain extent that I think culture is kind of widespread. It's one of those words that's hard to define because college football, in theory, right? In theory, everybody kind of has access to the same thing, at least in the Power Five, but it's the same 5 to 7 programs, not only for a 5-year stretch, but really over 20, 30 years, it's the same programs that are dominating, that are winning. And I think what you argue makes sense. I agree. And I think it's fair to look at Georgia and ask, do you have the traditional sort of status quo that the previous title winners have had? My only, I guess, caveat would be, I don't know that at this point in previous seasons, we thought LSU was going to be LSU or we thought Alabama's offense was going to be Alabama's offense. They became that, and we're looking back and seeing that in hindsight.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is I find it very difficult to think at the end of this year we are going to think JT Daniels is a top 15 pick. Georgia has 2 wide receivers that aren't George Pickens that are going to be first-round picks, and one of Georgia's running backs, whether it's James Cook or Zamir White, is a first-round pick. I personally don't see that happening. Does that mean they can't go to the college football playoff? No, but I'm just looking at the roster as it's constructed right now, and I know we're going to talk to Brooks here in a second. I just don't see it.
And we'll get some more insight on Georgia, how good this offense can be in just a little bit. Some good thoughts. BJ Bennett here alongside Ben Troop, Christian Gokel. Again, we'll talk Dogs football moving forward. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We'll come back with more 3 and Out, ESPNCoastal.com. Back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, and you talk about kind of that championship culture, Ben. You talk about what separates Alabama, and it's interesting because you look at Alabama; they just lost a first-round pick at quarterback, all-time leading rusher, first-round pick at running back, 2 top 10 receivers, 3 All-American offensive linemen, and they're probably going to be preseason number 1. In your mind, how do you define culture and kind of intermingle that with talent, and how do you find that recipe for a championship?
The way I define culture is, when you talk about the fans and what's going on inside the locker room being mirrored the same. Like a lot of, when you start, because I understand that your fans going to always have like your best interest in mind because they tied to you. But BJ, the culture is tied to the standard. What is the standard at your school? What are you guys looking to do in the B? I mean, if you Oklahoma, right, you expect their quarterback to be good. In recent years, either they're going to be, Heisman Trophy winners, Heisman Trophy finalists, number 1 overall picks. Who's the number 1 quarterback ranked coming back this year? Spencer Rattler. Where does he play at? Oklahoma. And then you talk about, what is your team striving towards? I mean, I use Florida to where their goal was to beat Georgia, because until you do it, it's going to be hard to say, you are a contender. But the key to winning a national championship, to me, is longevity and experience. Now, I know you got outliers. Trevor Lawrence was an outlier. Tua was an outlier, right? But most of the time, quarterback has been through something. They ain't come in and just have instant success. Then you had guys that, have gone through the ringer of trying to keep that status quo. If you Trevor Lawrence, I didn't want the status quo of the quarterback position of Clemson to dip because of me, especially when I did nothing to supersede Kelly Bryant. Let's call it what it is. He did not play better than Kelly Bryant to become the starter. If you got a guy like Mac Jones, can we still keep it going that we no longer have Tula and Jalen? And he did. So I think, BJ, to me, the key to winning the national championship is overcoming some level of adversity, longevity, and experience. Because when you look at these teams, that's what they have. They've overcome something. They got some longevity, got some experience, and they ain't letting that standard fall. So if you're trying to win the Natty, it's still going to come through Tuscaloosa, but you still going to need a good offense. So shout out to the homie Christian, man, because he's dropping them facts, but that seems to be the norm these days.
All right, quickly, you got about 30, 45 seconds. Does Georgia's offense, in your mind, meet that standard, or do we not know? There are too many unknowns right now.
I do, because Georgia has 5-star talent. JT Daniels, he came from California. He's a 5-star. They got a bunch of 5-stars at running back. I know they got no George Pickens, and we've seen a glimpse of it. The thing is, can they handle the pressure? It's not do they have the talent. I think they do got the talent. Number one to 2 or 3 in recruiting, but can you handle the pressure, BJ, of game in, game out? And when you play teams that meet your talent threshold, can you come out on the winning end? We'll see.
And obviously for Georgia, you're talking about an opener with Clemson. And I think it was one of our guests said this maybe a week or so ago. Georgia, in order to make the college football playoff, is almost certainly going to have to beat one of Clemson or Alabama. You don't have to beat both, but you have Clemson obviously in the opener. Obviously, you don't know how the season's going to unfold, but if you speculate and assume, I guess, that Alabama's going to be there in the SEC championship game as the winner of the West, and we know LSU's supposed to be better. We know Texas A&M's going to be good, but if you play it out like that, in order to make the Final Four, now we'll see what happens around Georgia, but you're probably going to have to beat one of Clemson or Alabama in the SEC championship game, and those are obviously big challenges right there. So we'll see how it all plays out. Brooks Austin will join us next. We'll take 3 right around the corner as well. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, ESPNCoastal.com. Back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. Hope you're doing well. Always talking college football on the show. And Georgia. A lot of talk the last few days about the Bulldogs' offensive potential, their production. Ben, as we are efforting Brooks Austin of DogsDailySI.com, in your mind, what is your vision? And I say this understanding that one Saturday out of the year, you don't want them to perform especially well. But what is your vision? What are your expectations for this Georgia offense?
I expect him to not miss a beat. I think everybody going to be focusing on George Pickens not being there, but the fact of the matter is when he got hurt, not that he got hurt, it's going to be hard to replace him. But when you look at what Georgia has at the wide receiver position, you know, with Jackson and Burton and those guys, and you talk about Robinson and those guys, you add Darnell Washington, you got some big time talent, BJ, and all we seem to be talking about is JT Daniels and the offensive weapons, and we're not talking about the running game. If you can get that healthy balance of both pass and run, when you know you got guys, you got JT Daniels, a guy that can push the ball down the field. If them guys can develop that balance, which is going to force a defense, to be honest, this offense can be very, 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 very scary.
We have found Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily on SI. Glad to have him here with us. Brooks, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. It sounds like I came in the midst of a heated debate. Is that the case?
Well, every debate. I mean, come on. Every debate has a couple of different perspectives here when you talk about college football and Georgia, especially here in the preseason. So we'll ask you what we've been talking about. Is Georgia offensively good enough to win a national championship?
100%. And I think you can say that with confidence for the first time revolving a Georgia football team since, I can't even remember when. I guess in 2017, they knew they were going to have a strong running game, but when was the last time a really, really strong running game was the sole determining factor in a football team winning a national championship in college football? It's been quite a while, but entering this year, it's all the optimism is warranted in terms of, are they overrated, underrated, properly rated? That's a determination on what your rating of them actually is. And if your bar is set at, are they good enough to win a national title, all things considered, nowadays it requires about 35 points per game to be considered a quote-unquote national title caliber offense, and they will certainly be at that threshold this season, in my opinion.
And Brooks, when I think about a Georgia offense, when I think about a guy that's going to be able to take them back to that national championship game and get over the hump, I think about a guy who grew up, in the state of Georgia, growing up wanting to be a Georgia Bulldog, knowing some of the great quarterbacks of the past. I never thought it to be a guy that grew up in the state of California, went to another school, transferred in, but seems to be the missing piece of this Coach Monken puzzle.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect blend of a quarterback in the sense that JT Daniels has this he doesn't really care for risk, or he doesn't care about risk in the sense that he's going to put the ball in the air and give his guys opportunities to win, even if they're tightly covered. He said it best after the Mississippi State game. If you're not going to give those guys opportunities to win as wide receivers, then don't recruit them. He put it very, very simply. And I believe Todd Monken runs his offense and calls his offense in a very similar manner. This is not a guy with a quarterback's coaching background. This is a guy that worked his way up the ranks to become an offensive coordinator through the alley and through the channels of being a wide receivers coach. And I believe he calls and designs his offense thusly. He designs his offense to give his weapons on the outside opportunities to win. And you pair that with a quarterback that believes in that same similar mindset of an offensive scheme and offensive tactics, and you've got a perfect marriage. And I think that's what you're hitting on there, Ben. Whether he's from Cali or not, it just so happens that this guy is from California, had never stepped foot in the state of Georgia prior to his commitment and even moving on to campus. So he's a Georgia boy now, that's for sure.
National championship teams often have first-round picks at quarterback. In your mind, is JT Daniels, I know we're a ways away from it, but is he a guy that could be a first-round pick at quarterback?
There's people with quarterback credentials like Jordan Palmer out here saying that Bo Nix is going to be a first-round quarterback. So if there are people that believe Bo Nix, who has never completed more than 60% of his passes in college football, can be a first-round NFL quarterback, then by God, yes, JT Daniels is going to be in that conversation of first-round quarterbacks come up in 2022. If he does what he did last year in the 4 games alone, yeah, he's going to be in that first-round caliber of discussion.
Brooks, when you think about a guy like George Pickens who's no longer there, I mean, it's going to be hard to think he's going to be able to contribute at all in 2021. You know what you got in Burton. You know what you got in, Demetrius Robinson. You know what you got in Kearis Jackson. Is there another name out there at the receiver position that's probably going to end up being that go-to guy that wasn't really a key contributor last year?
I mean, it's the young guys, right? I mean, it's the guys that we didn't really get to see an opportunity even in that 2020 signing class a year ago. And names like Justin Robinson, who was having an exceptional spring, banged up his knees the last week of practice leading up to the spring game. I think he would have been the talk of camp had it not been Adonai Mitchell who lit up G-Day. I think all of those same opportunities you saw Adonai get from JT Daniels' right arm, a lot of those would have went to Justin Robinson this spring with Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint out, still rehabbing from his ankle. He's coming back as well. So he was really showing signs of a freshman coming onto the scene in that Florida game. He got his first career touchdown, and then unfortunately, one of them dirty Gator players, ended up, breaking his ankle. So just a common football injury nowadays, it appears, though. So all jokes aside, but no, those are the names I'm looking forward to seeing, and just how they use a guy like Arian Smith. If you go back to Todd Monken's days with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you're looking at a guy like Deshaun Jackson, who is Arian Smith, as an 11-year pro, 12-year vet. And he had a career year, 8 or 9 years into his NFL career. He had the best season of his life under Todd Monken. I think almost averaged like 17 yards per reception, something astronomical like that. So all things are pointing to them being still deep enough and explosive enough at the wide receiver position, even with Pickens out, however long he's going to be out.
All right. Well, in your mind, I know you've mentioned a lot of guys. Who's Georgia's number one wide receiver right now?
Oh, it's Jermaine Burton. 100% Jermaine Burton. I mean, he was nearing onto that last year. Jermaine's such an interesting eval because, you see he's about 5'11", 6 foot, 6'1" maybe tops, but is just an exceptional route runner. Probably a 4.5 runner in the 40, so not like overly explosive, but does everything as a wide receiver in the perfect manner. I mean, just gets in and out of his breaks exceptionally. He can separate early in a route, so if you needed somebody to help you out in the quick game, he's got you. He could separate late in routes, which makes him a threat down the field as well. And I mean, his skill set matches perfectly for this offense, but the modern offenses of professional football even extending it to that level. If you look at some of the top wide receivers that we've seen in the NFL over the last couple of years, they're no longer, the Calvin Johnson lookalikes. Julio Jones is about the only one left in the NFL nowadays. Devontae Adams is 6'1". Odell Beckham's 6'1". Jarvis Landry's 6'1". The 6'3" wide receivers, again, apart from Julio Jones and DK Metcalf, they don't really exist anymore. It's more the Stephon Diggses of the world that are out here leading the league in receiving yards. So it's opened alleys for guys like Jermaine, but you've got to be exceptionally talented and gifted in your route running department, and that's exactly what he is.
I mean, Brooks, with so much talk about the passing game, and rightfully so, when you got a guy like, got guys like Burton, you got a guy like JT Daniels, but with so much talk about it, would you be surprised if at the end of the day, this Georgia team end up going back to what they used to do and letting guys, like Zebo and Zamir White and James Cook end up taking more of a leading role?
I mean, I still think you're going to see a balanced offense. I mean, it's not going to be them coming out and throwing the ball on 65% of their downs. Last year, they were still a little bit run heavy. I think they were 52% run to 48% pass. I think this year, maybe that's flip-flopped on its inverse. Maybe they're 52% pass, 48% run. Look, it's still going to be that brand of Georgia football in the sense that, we're up 3 scores in the fourth quarter. There's 12 minutes left. Statistically, it says we've got to go get 3 first downs, and they don't have enough time left to score 3 times. So that's exactly what they'll do. They'll line up. They'll play smash mouth football if they've got to, because you've always got to have that trick in your bag in the SEC, I believe. As explosive as we've always seen Alabama be in these national title runs as of late with their new offensive system that Lane Kiffin brought over, and now they've revamped multiple times under several different Sarkisian and now Bill O'Brien as offensive coordinators. They can still line it up and run an extra 35 times a game for 5.5 yards to carry. You still got to have that trick in your bag, and I don't think that's ever going to leave the University of Georgia under Kirby Smart, despite how vertically aggressive they're going to be in the passing game this year.
Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily, SI. And I wanted to ask you that because in today's college football, right, it feels like, and the stats reflect this, that, hey, you better throw it, you better be productive, you better be proficient, you better score. But even for championship teams who have that ability, do you have to kind of have the ability offensively to respond to circumstance? And if you need to slow it down, slow it down. If you need to run the ball, run the ball. And do you think Georgia has that ability?
100. I think they are going to be schematically versatile. I think that's something that Monken put on display last year. They looked kind of stagnant in the second half against Alabama, really turnover heavy in that football game. They take a week off, they go to Kentucky, and they run the ball on, I think, 80% of their snaps in that football game and really grind out a 14-3 win. And then JT Daniels takes over the offense towards the end of the year. And no longer were they running, mesh routes, mesh concepts, quick slants, quick game, taking deep shots every now and then off of a play action format. No, they spread it out and they let it rip. And I mean, he was throwing it 28, 30 times a game. So they were schematically versatile a year ago. I think they will be, still have that ability to do that this year if they need to.
And Brooks, when it's all said and done, I mean, we talk about this Georgia team is going to get all the hype. They're going to be one of the top, one or two teams as far as like recruiting, going to be one of the top 4 teams preseason rankings. When it's all said and done, do you think this team is ready for those guys in Tuscaloosa, those guys at Clemson, to be able to finally get over that hump and say, hey, man, we finna hoist up this national championship?
I know we're getting closer and closer to the season, and people keep trying to pin me down for that answer. Can they beat Clemson? Can they beat Alabama? And I'm not copping out on you here, Ben. I just think it's way too early to even get into that. But yeah, boo, yeah.
Brooke, you done got seasoned on. Brooks.
I'm ruining the radio segment. I apologize, but no, I think it's way too early as of right now. Let's talk in August. Let's get through camp, make sure they don't have another major injury, and then we'll address those things. In terms of Clemson, those rosters are eerily similar. Both of them are inexperienced and young at the cornerback position. Both of them have questions as to their number one wide receiver's health. We don't know if Justin Robinson is going to be ready game one. That's not a definite. We definitely don't know. We don't think George Pickens is going to be there week one. He's not going to be there week one. Your offensive line is young, and there's a couple of starters here and there sprinkled in. Your football team is led through your front seven on your defensive side of the football on both rosters. The only difference, and if you want to pin me down for a prediction, the only difference is I think Georgia's got this not a significant advantage, but they have the advantage at the quarterback position just based off of what we know of each individual. We don't know much about DJ Uiagalelei and how he's going to respond in his first real expected start under a national limelight. I know the Notre Dame game was what it was, but that Notre Dame game turned out like it did. They lost that football game. So the more consistent and the more known football player and more constant football player at this point, JT Daniels. And so I give them the slight edge in the one positional category that you have to have it in the quarterback position.
Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily on SI.com. Brooks, always enjoy the conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no doubt.
And it's interesting to talk about Georgia as it pertains to the national championship because you may say, oh, come on, that's months away. Well, it is, but they open with Clemson, and that's a game that's going to have a direct impact. I think JT Daniels is an impressive player. I thought he was very productive, very proficient a year ago. But for me, I mean, I'll say it right now, and I agree with Brooks. You got to see kind of what's going to happen in fall camp, et cetera. But for me right now, I think Clemson is one of the very few teams, along with Alabama, that I would say is on paper better than Georgia right now.
And BJ, the whole thing about it is this: we always talking about culture. Culture seems to be the theme of this show, right? Well, both of these coaches are going to come up against each other, with one of them kind of being that team that's already beaten Alabama, and then the other one having that 5-star, power as far as like culture goes. But DJU, he hasn't played as many games as JT Daniels, but DJU his first start in college football was against Notre Dame, and they did not lose the game or win the game because of him. It was because of the defense. I'm looking forward to it because Dabo, Kirby, Georgia, Clemson, two teams that used to play each other in the past. But people talking about, well, I don't think Clemson can afford to lose this game. When people say Georgia can lose this game and go on a run, that means they got to go undefeated in the SEC. Good luck with that. It is a long ways away, but when guys like Brooke Austin don't even want to give us a prediction that show you, BJ, them seats are not just hot with the head coach, with the beat writer, but I love you, Brooks.
Well, that's going to be a fun game to open it up. We'll come back. We'll take three and out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. A Friday afternoon edition of 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. We got Christian Gokel, Cody Queen. And as we take 3 here a little bit later than normal, we will send it back to Cody Queen to take 3 here on 3 and Out.
Hello, fellas. It's me, your boy, Cody Queen. You ready for take 3? Take 1. Frank Gore turns 38 today. We've seen a lot of impressive performances from older athletes, but does anything compare to a 38-year-old NFL running back just existing?
It's amazing because you think about the wear and tear. I mean, think about most running backs, right, over the history of the NFL. It's like guys sometimes don't even get second contracts. You know, a lot of teams will say, hey, we want to draft a running back or we want to have a running back that we sign out of free agency, and then in 3-4 years we're going to turn to somebody else because the wear and tear, and you get hit every play. I mean, even when you're not running the football, you're blocking, you're getting hit. I mean, it is significant. It is overwhelming, and you're not talking about a 5-year career, a 10-year, a 15+ year career. And it's not like, you know, he's not productive. He's still very productive, very proficient. Is what, top 3 all time in the history of the league in rushing yards, and is ready for more. So yeah, shout out to Frank Gore. Just remarkable, incredible, and you just haven't seen much like this.
Yeah, Frank Gore is a guy that's not talked about enough. I mean, the fact that he's 38 years old, still productive in the National Football League. No, he's not going to lead the league in rushing yards, but as far as like being a veteran presence, a guy that can provide some, you know, quality wisdom to these young guys, and his son, Frank Gore Jr., is one of the best returning backs at Southern Miss. But BJ, the thing about Frank Gore is not being talked about enough is he got hurt in Miami, right? That's the only reason why Willis McGahee played. Willis McGahee was not the backup. You know, it was Frank Gore. So Frank Gore gets hurt. Willis McGahee gets to play. He gets to start. He gets drafted in the first round. Frank Gore goes and has an incredible career, 16,000 yards. So Frank Gore is number 3 all time in rushing. He's 38. He's doing the LeBron, though. LeBron James said he's going to retire once his son gets to the league. I think that Frank Gore Sr. wants to play with the same talent as Frank Gore Jr. But shout out to Frank Gore, man. I mean, I think, BJ, he's reshaping what we talk about. Was Frank Gore ever considered the best running back in the league? No. Was Frank Gore ever considered a top 5 running back? No. But he does do number 3. Can you talk about the running back position without talking about a guy who has 16,000 yards? You can't. Future Hall of Famer. Shout out to that man. And like I said, you know, people say, what type of genes you need? You need them Gore genes, because this guy gonna play as long as he want to play.
So you're saying he might not, well, you said he won't be the Russian leader by the end of it. He's only about 700 yards behind Walter Payton. He ran for almost 700 yards last year, 2020. So maybe he will pass Walter Payton eventually. He's 2,300 yards behind Emmitt Smith. So it's not unheard of to see this guy keep on going. And for another 3-4 years, and then just overpower these guys?
The league will start hating on the league. The league will start. They'll stop hating. You know, the league, they don't want to. But I'm just saying. Look, there's something to say about longevity, but it's something to say about being productive throughout that level of longevity. Because I will say this, BJ, if Ed Reed don't tackle Frank Gore in the Super Bowl, he scores and they beat the Ravens. So shout out to that Hurricane, and shout out to that man Frank Gore Sr. putting in work while Frank Gore Jr. is in college.
It's amazing.
All right, take 2. If you worked PR for the Braves and a reporter asked you about the possibility of firing Brian Snitker, your response would be what?
Well, I'd probably say something along the lines of, look, it's early May. It's mid-May. We're not evaluating anybody's job status. We're the back-to-back defending division champs. We were knocking on the door of the World Series last year. This is an organization that has high expectations, and we've met those the last couple of years. We feel like we're a contender. We have not gotten off to the start we wanted to, but we don't feel like that's necessarily indicative of any individual or any group or any, manager, player. We're focused on being the best we can be this season, and Brian Snitker's demand for the job.
BJ, I hope you are never my PR agent, because you sound exactly like every team sounds directly before they fire their coach.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Like that's the worst thing you can get. If you get he not on the hot seat at all.
Reaffirmation. That's the worst thing you can get. Like, Brian Snitker's getting fired tomorrow if you say that.
True.
I mean, I'm gonna say that's funny. I'm gonna say that's laughable.
Thank you. There we go.
I'm gonna say, hold on for a second. I'm gonna say, okay. I'm gonna say what? Well, a guy that was supposed to be a fill-in and won, the NL East 3 years in a row. That has a regular season MVP. That was four outs away of going to the World Series. That has the best young superstar in baseball. Snitker doesn't pitch. Snitker doesn't hit. And neither do the pitchers on the team, and neither do the hitters on the team. So,
wow, you work in Braves PR, and you're wow.
Because listen, stop looking for an outlier. Stop looking for a scapegoat. It is not the guy who has to fill out the lineup. It's the guys that have numbers on their chest that run out there with names on their back. I'm not gonna get rid of Smith because if I'm gonna keep the players, I'm gonna keep the guy that put these guys out there to put them in position. It's 1 year because why don't you want to fire him? He just got a contract extension, right? Because of what he's done. All I'm saying is let the players decide what happens on the field and leave the guy who only, manages those guys alone.
It is amazing because this is like asking, and this is really the reason I put it in there is because this has been circulating with reporters in and around the Atlanta Braves on Twitter is when do you start looking at Brian Snitker? And they've compared him to firing Dan Quinn, and they've compared it to firing Lloyd Pierce. Neither one of those teams had made the playoffs in a very long time, and they were going in the wrong direction. The Braves are just removed from being a game away from going to the World Series, and this would be the equivalent in NFL of firing your coach after a 2-2 start. So everybody needs to calm the hell down.
Yeah, it'd be an overreaction. That's not a good take, Brian Snitker. Look, that doesn't mean that there haven't been any areas of criticism. I know Kevin has questioned some of the bullpen usage, but come on, we're sitting here, like you said, in mid-May with a team and a manager that has been the standard in the division in recent years.
What you do is, giggle, giggle. Next question.
Let's talk about real
things. That's it. Yep. All right, take 3. Today is National Buttermilk Biscuit Day. Take some time to reflect on the most perfect piece of food we have. Then describe your favorite dish that includes it.
Well, I did do some reflecting, and when I think about a buttermilk biscuit, I think about two things that immediately come to mind. And Cody, you have me kind of going back and forth with some of your messages on the chat. I think about jelly, and I think about gravy.
I try not to talk.
Oh, okay. I think about jelly, and I think about gravy, and that's where a biscuit is at its best, is best utilized. And to me, it might initially taste a little better, just kind of 1 or 2 bites with the jelly. But I think the gravy is so multifunctional, right? Because you can just grab it, dip it, you can sop it up, you can soak it up. I think when I think about a biscuit, gravy is the perfect complement and addition. And a shout out to Biscuits and Gravy, Kevin Thomas. I know that would be his take.
I can't believe he's missing this holiday.
Say what now?
Can't believe he's missing this holiday.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's probably somewhere eating biscuits and gravy, but I'm going to say that for me and for him, I think it's and I love a biscuit with jelly. I do, but I think the taste, the versatility, the functional kind of ability you have with just gravy in a bowl or left over on a plate, I'm going to say biscuits and gravy. Man, this brings back memories. My great-grandmother, Nella Louise Elwood, she made fresh baked biscuits every single day. I mean, that's all I knew her to be. She made biscuits every single day. My grandma, when I think about biscuits, I think about syrup, and most syrup. I'm just saying, you got a fresh hot biscuit, you put some syrup on it. Jelly's also there too. But this is what I think about when I think about biscuits. Cody, in the South, we don't need napkins. I use that biscuit to get up everything on that plate. It's that sopper upper. When you say I'm sop it up, that's you sop it up with that biscuit. Biscuits makes everything better for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. Hey man, what you doing with these biscuits over here? That's what they bring to your table to get you ready to go. I mean, for me, love the jelly, love the syrup, but for me, it's what brings it all together. Ate you a nice little meal, you finish it off with that biscuit. Cody, listen, man, you've been in the South too long. You frowning up your face. I mean, maybe you want jam. Maybe you want preserves, Cody. I'm just saying, we call it jelly in the South. We don't want no jam. You know what I'm saying? Because jam don't shake like jelly. You better get right.
I like my perfect thing would be jelly and butter on a biscuit. Love it. I mean, that's
really hard to argue.
But I am not very Southern in the where I think gravy is the most disgusting thing to grace.
Well, listen,
the earth.
for context,
That and
Cody,
grits. Don't like grits.
Yeah, for context, Cody doesn't like chocolate or macaroni and cheese either. So I mean,
Made by the devil. Can't do
Cody
it.
Has a very weird
Can't do it.
palate.
Only sinners eat that. Man, I'm not a
No,
sinner.
but see,
I ain't
Cody,
doing it.
Cody, have you experienced, since you lived in the South, but you lived in like the North South where you lived in Florida, and that's really a bunch of Yankees more than it is Southerners in the part you were living.
Yep.
Have you experienced a cat head biscuit
Never heard of this in my life.
where it's as big as a cat's head? Like the
A
biscuit?
cat head biscuit.
Yes, it's. I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about. Yes.
Yes, when you have to open
Thank
that bad boy.
And then you basically have to have like 4 eggs to cover the entire biscuit. And you get like 4 slices of bacon or like a huge sausage.
See, I don't
patty
like eggs either.
and some cheese on there. That is
wrong with
an
you?
undefeated breakfast. And like usually the best ones you get are from like a backwoods gas station where they're just the best biscuit you've ever had in your life.
Listen, I'm telling you, I've had a biscuit with a piece of fried chicken in the middle with the bacon, with an egg, a hard boiled egg. I tried to do a gourmet style. I put the syrup around the bottom, of the biscuit, slapped it on that Cody, and I took it and I just swirled it up. Cody, we trying to show you how to live. You don't eat macaroni and cheese. You don't eat biscuits. And you said the devil made it. You are sinning because you don't eat that stuff.
I eat biscuits. I do enjoy biscuits. I love biscuits. It's just not the gravy, not the eggs. My chicken biscuit's really good. Dude, you're talking about syrup on there.
That's kind of odd.
Gonna have to try that because that sounds delicious.
This is what you're gonna do though. I'm gonna take this is the key though. Okay, I mean, because I used to do this when I was in college. You want to make sure that your biscuit is hot. Take your syrup, put it in the bowl, put it in the microwave. Make sure the syrup is kind of hot. Dip it in there. And I'm telling you, it's gonna save your life.
That sounds good, boy.
BJ, you know what this makes me think of, and I'm curious if I'm the only one on the show who experienced this as a kid. The delicacy of your parents toasting bread and then putting butter on it with cinnamon and sugar.
Yes.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a classic. Yeah, and Cody, look, if you haven't tried all of this, you have to try it. I agree with Ben. Ben, the syrup is special, the jelly is special, but the gravy, man. If Kevin was here, he'd be riding hard for the gravy. The gravy and the biscuit and the gravy go together. Just keep an open mind. Give it a chance. And I do agree with Ben. You can use it for, you can use that biscuit and just clean everything up, finish everything up. We'll come back.
You said the toast one?
Yeah.
My family does tortillas the same way.
That sounds
delicious.
delicious. But you know what gravy is, right?
Yeah, I don't.
It's
I don't
literally
eat all that.
it's literally just fat and flour.
Yeah, it's gross.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. We'll come back. We'll talk some NFL 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on a Friday afternoon. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. And Ben wanted to talk with you about some of these rookies getting ready for the NFL. And we'll hear from Marcus Murphy, Atlanta Falcons signee, coming up in just a little bit. But transitioning from college to the pros, and I have a couple of guys I want to ask you about in particular. But just for you, when you think about the transition, what's the biggest challenge as you go from even big-time college football to the NFL after the draft?
Terminology. Some of these plays are going to be very, very wordy, being able to pick up where you fit it within a play. And then once you learn the terminology, you got to learn the concepts. When you're in college, you learn plays. I learned what I got to do on this given play and get out the way. Now I got to know what the concept of the play is, because I might have to fill in a position that I do not play because it fits the concept of what we're trying to do as an offense. Terminology is always going to be important, because terminology puts you in the mindset, BJ, of what the head coach and the offensive or defensive coordinator is thinking, because that's how they talk to you in the pros. They'll say, what am I thinking on this play? Not what the play is. So, you'll say, well, based on the shade of the defense or the shade of the nose, or how the defense is shifted over, I think that's the main thing is your IQ, picking up the terminology, understanding concepts, understanding why the concept is what it is, and situational football, like knowing why the situation is what it is and can you fit within that situation. It's a lot to throw at you, but it took me a while to understand that getting drafted makes you a pro. It does not make you a professional. It is a different thing, and the professional knows what to do and does it, knows where to be in it there. A pro just got drafted. Like, that's it. You're a pro, but that doesn't mean you're ready to step out there. So these rookies, especially me, it was a whirlwind for me because it took me a little while to put it all together. Learn the concept, didn't learn the terminology. Oh, you're not a pro. So, and understand that they pay you to get it done. So when you talk about, hey, coach, I ain't used to people talking to me like this. Do something else. Hey, coach, I'm not used to this much criticism. Do something else. Because, BJ, this is where the best in the world play. Deion Sanders said it the best. The NFL is not where you go to learn the game of football. There's where you go to show what you've learned. You learn the game in college. And if you're trying to pick up on stuff now, it's going to fly right by you. So, I know that's a lot, but it's just the fact that it's a lot that goes into it, because now people's livelihood is on the line.
Jacksonville drafts Tyson Campbell out of Georgia at the top of the second round. Obviously, a very talented defensive back. Urban Meyer reportedly training him at corner and at nickel. What is the difference, and are there specific requirements?
One is on an island, and the other one is the go-to position. When you look at third down, like now, BJ, we saw something before when I was telling you it was 30. I think it was 38 cornerbacks drafted, 36 receivers drafted in the 2021 draft. The nickel position is that third receiver. That's where the ball is going to go on third down. In order to get off the field, you got to shut down that nickel guy. When I say a nickel guy, you're going up against Jarvis Landry. You're going up against Cole Beasley. You're going up against Kyle Pitts. You got to be able to get because 80 to 90% of the balls are thrown in between the numbers. Cornerbacks got to live outside the hash. You got to be able to shut down the best athlete on the field. But obviously, BJ, for Campbell, they must got big plans for him, because they cross-training him, which, like I said, just look at Jalen Ramsey. Look at where he is on first and second down, and look at where he goes on third down. Wherever the action is, a.k.a. in the nickel, so that's why he gets paid the money he gets paid. But, yeah, man, shout out to Mr. Campbell, man. They got some big plans for him. He's going to have to be shut down, BJ, because they're going to come right at him. Not because he's a rookie. Oh, I'm sorry. That's exactly why they're going to come at him, because he's a rookie.
Falcons didn't draft a running back, but they signed Javion Hawkins out of Louisville. Very productive and proficient at Louisville. Big play running back. One NFL insider says he's the best running back on the Falcons roster. Do you think he could be that?
Yes, and he's a home run hitter, BJ. Obviously, when you look at what he brings to the table, he's gonna have more pressure on him, because Matty Ice gonna put more pressure on him. Got to pick up the blitz. Got to know where the blitz is coming from, but you got to be efficient in the passing game, not just in the run game. Obviously, I know what he can do. BJ running the football in between the tackles. He's a home run hitter, but the sooner he can pick up those blitzes, those protections, and dare I say, catch the ball out the backfield, he can be a big time pickup, for them Falcons.
All right, let's get some picks from you, Ben. Obviously, a lot of folks are already speculating, but Rookie of the Year on offense and defense. Give me your offensive Rookie of the Year first. A lot of high-profile guys, of course.
Listen, when this guy came off the board, and like I think like 24, I think it's going to be Najee Harris. For the Pittsburgh Steelers. When you look at what Pittsburgh wants to do, they want to run the football, right? I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, we the same age. I'm not going to divulge his age, but we are the same age. He just happens to be playing football, and while I'm doing radio, I think, BJ, when you look at what Najee Harris does for an offense, he keeps the offense balanced, and he's built to be a Pittsburgh Steeler when you talk about that ground and pound, getting better as the game goes on, and you can't coach 6'2", 230. And he's all a 230, 235. You got to make business decisions in the third and fourth quarter. Offensive rookie of the year for me, Najee Harris.
All right, defense.
Woo, when this boy came off the board, when he did, I think it's going to be Micah Parsons. I think when you look at what this Dallas Cowboy defense needs, that he is a heat-seeking missile. I mean, I had a number 2, which I hated holler at my boy Nick Bolton, with those Kansas City Chiefs. I think Micah Parsons, BJ, 4.4 speed. Opted out, probably would have got drafted higher had he played last year. But when you look at what Dallas is lacking, they're looking for a side-to-side linebacker who can also cover. I think Micah Parsons, rookie of the year, not just that star on his helmet, star in the making.
All right. Now, going back to your offensive pick, rookie of the year on offense, how much consideration did you give to the quarterbacks, and which quarterback do you think would have the best chance potentially to be rookie of the year?
Justin Fields. I mean, because he has the best surrounding cast. Not just with the offensive side, because he's going to put up numbers, right? He's going to put up numbers. Allen Robinson is one of those receivers that still ain't getting the credit he deserves when you look at what he does. I just think that, BJ, when you look at what he brings to the table, both, dual threat, pretty deep ball, and he's disrespected, right? Everybody like, oh, he should have been number 2, good enough to be number 1, ends up going to Chicago, making that GM in Chicago look good. But when you got Khalil Mack and Trevathan and those guys on the other side of the ball, all he got to do is not mess it up. I think Justin Fields is going to light this league up.
And finally, and obviously you have such great perspective on this, we talked about the biggest obstacle for these guys getting ready, whether you're drafted, whether you're a free agent, whether you're first round, whether you're 7th. I know you've talked a lot about just the value of the opportunity of the chance. What do you have to do to be successful? What advice would you give the new wave of rookies as they get ready for the next level?
Listen to the vets, regardless if he's a Pro Bowler, regardless if he's been a future Hall of Famer. They've done something you haven't done. They found a way to have sustainability in the National Football League. I don't care where they got drafted. I don't care how much money they make. Let them take you under their wing so they can show you the ropes. That's what a lot of these rookies don't understand. Every good rookie had a mentor. I don't care what the player was. When you get to these Hall of Fame speeches, if it wouldn't have been for this guy, if it wouldn't have been for that guy, just find you a veteran and just listen to him. I don't care even if you're going to be the man, just understand that, everybody got to come in with a humble mentality, and you got to learn how to be consistent. The thing about the NFL, it's not about how many plays you make, it's how consistently you make them. You got to consistently make those plays, and can you show it when everybody knows where the ball is going? Like people go, why is Calvin Johnson the first ballot Hall of Fame? Because we all know that Matthew Stafford throwing it to him. The whole defense, no touchdown. Can you be that? Because BJ, hype is beautiful until you got to live up to it. Not everybody can live up to it, but find you a mentor, be humble, understand that you haven't done anything yet, understand that you are not going to reshape the game. But look, man, have fun with it, be humble. Take your bumps and your bruises and understand, as my coach would say, to every hammer, there is a nail. And you're gonna have to understand that you're gonna be on both sides of that.
A lot of star power, a lot of talent coming into the league, and we'll see how these guys do. We'll come back, some news with Ronald Acuna and the Braves. We'll address that next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Braves and Brewers tonight. We'll have that for you a little bit later as Atlanta is in Milwaukee. Some news, Ben, regarding Ronald Acuna Jr. A day-to-day, obviously, after what could have been a significant injury does not appear to be. He's potentially going to come back in the next couple of days, but he will not be in the lineup tonight. No Ronald Acuna tonight. The lineup: Adrianza, Freeman, Ozuna, Albies, Swanson, Riley, Contreras, Inciarte. So you'll need some new guys to step up with Ronald Acuna out.
Well, you hope so, BJ. And like I said, I mean, Ronald Acuna, you have it that it is day-to-day, that it's not season-ending, but next man up. And that's true in every pro sport. This Braves team will have to find a way to get a spark. And how much of a spark would it provide, BJ, if your best player on the team is not in the lineup, and you still find a way to get a big dub? They need a W, but they need those bats to come alive.
And I think Freddie Freeman, Marcell Ozuna, you look at those guys with Acuna out, even if it's just for a couple of days. I'm sure Freddie Freeman and Marcell Ozuna are both disappointed with where their batting average is. And both guys have had big hits in recent days, even against Toronto. But, you talk about pro sports all the time and kind of the confidence aspect, right? It's between the ears. I think if you could get a single early, a walk early, get going early, I think you'll see one of those guys, both of those guys, have a good weekend.
I think so, and that's what it takes. I mean, confidence is always going to be the biggest thing when you talk about being a pro athlete. That's what separates the good from the great. And this Braves team, and it doesn't matter who it comes from. I mean, I would love for it to come from a guy like Ozzie Albies when you look at him kind of having his struggles, and I know he gets sick of dealing with it. But listen, the same way you hit yourself out of a slump is the same way you got yourself in it. You got to find a way to go out there and make it happen, BJ. We'll see what happens, but no time like the present. Hopefully they get it done tonight.
Big series. You're 4 games out in the National League East. You're 3 games under 500. The Mets have won 7 in a row. And keep in mind, after this weekend against the Brewers, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, you're playing the Mets. So the Mets coming to town. That's a critical series when you look at the East and the standings. So you need some momentum. You need some traction. Going to be hard without Acuna. But you look at the top of that lineup: Adrianza, Freeman, Ozuna, and Albies. You mentioned Albies. I think he could have a big weekend, and we'll see what Drew Smyly can do. We'll talk about that next. What are the expectations for the Braves on the mound? Can the pitching improve? It's a big spot tonight for Drew Smyly, who was moved back a couple of days. We'll talk about that next. 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Back here with you for hour 3 of 3 and Out on a Friday afternoon. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. Hope you're doing well, getting ready for a big weekend. Braves and Brewers this weekend in Milwaukee. That coming up. First pitch at 8:10, pregame coverage right before 7, so we'll have that for you in just a little bit. We'll hear from Marcus Murphy with the Falcons coming up this hour. We'll also talk ACC quarterbacks. Could the ACC have the best collection of quarterbacks in the country? But Ben, I wanted to get a feel for kind of where your confidence level is with the Braves right now, because I know if Kevin was here, he would say, hey, look, calm down. It's early, and I understand that, and I agree with that. But you're also talking about after this weekend, 40 games. So that's a substantial number of games. Now, if you have success this weekend compared to if you struggle, maybe that changes in a big way how you feel on Monday. But at this point, 4 games out of first, 3 games under 500, injuries, as we said a minute ago, Ronald Acuna not in the lineup tonight. Where's your confidence level with this Braves team?
It's low, BJ, not because I don't think they can get it done, but because where do you point to any level of stability? I mean, Ronald Acuna is not even in the lineup. I mean, Drew Smiley's going to get the start. I just think that, Christian Pache goes to he goes to the DL. You're still waiting on Mike Soroka to get back. Will Smith, he's not playing up to par. I mean, Snit getting criticized for his mismanagement of the bullpen. I just think that while I know what the Braves can do, it's an update your resume, daily type sport, and they haven't been doing it. You got sparks. I mean, think about this. Pablo Sandoval, how important has he been to this Braves team this year? He was supposed to be a fill-in piece. And I'm not trying to separate him from the Braves, but I expect Ronald Acuna to be Ronald Acuna. I just expect him to do, but he's only one player. And I just think that, and the reason why I say, I don't have a lot of confidence in this team, because they have like an all or nothing type way of playing this year, BJ. It's either really, really good or it's hard to watch. And you be asking yourself, you can look up the Braves and the Braves can score 5 runs in the first inning and they can give up 5. That's the type of team they are right now. But it is 4 games. And I just think that while the Mets are playing well, they haven't just ran away with the division. It's always what pre-All-Star game, post-All-Star game. You want to be in it pre-All-Star. But BJ, I ask you, when you start thinking about what makes up a baseball team, you always say Sarson was starting pitching, but that's not it. One of the best lineups, not living up to it, and that bullpen is hard. These fill-in players or these bench players have been good for the Braves when called upon. But if your bench is the only bright spot, that don't give me a lot of confidence moving forward. I'm not going to turn into this Debbie Downer, them being down 4 games that in division. But I do think I'm gonna have to see some promise, BJ. But I'm looking for stability, not the ebbs and flows, but I kind of want to see stability from a consistent standpoint, and I just haven't seen that yet.
Couple of points. You're right about the bench. So many people said in the preseason, "Oh, this bench is not going to be good. They're going to really struggle." They've been good. They've helped you kind of tread water here and be at least within reach of 500. I think if you wouldn't have what you've had from Adrianza and obviously Sandoval, and then you're talking about Heredia, if not for some of these guys off the bench, you would be in a much worse position. So you're appreciative of the work they've done, and I think looking forward to more production there. But I do think it starts on the mound. And to go back to a point you made earlier, which I think is often overlooked, starting pitching affects everything. If your starting pitching is struggling, I think at the plate, guys start to press. We know we better score 5, 6, 7 runs or we're going to lose. Obviously, if your starting pitching is going out in the 4th, 5th inning, it's putting a lot of pressure on your bullpen every single night. And for as good as those guys are, no bullpen arm in baseball is meant to go out every day or 3 out of 4 games. So to me, everything starts with starting pitching. And when you look at the rotation right now, Mike Soroka, we obviously have not seen. We don't know when we're going to see him. Max Fried has been really good the last couple of times out, but his start to the season was terrible. Charlie Morton's been a disappointment. ERA above 5 for a guy that's a multi-time All-Star. Drew Smiley tonight, really encouraged by what he did the last time out against Washington. He went 6 innings, gave up no earned runs, 1 run with an error. If you could get that tonight, that would be huge. But I think if you're looking at expectations for Smiley, this is a guy that's in his 30s. You brought him in to kind of be a stabilizer in some respects. And right now I'm trying to find the updated. His ERA is 6.12, which obviously is very poor. And prior to his start against the Nats, where he was great, and give him a lot of credit for that. You go back a couple of starts against Toronto, went 4 innings, gave up 6 runs. Against Arizona, went 4 innings, gave up 6 runs. Against Philadelphia, went 5 innings, gave up 5 runs. You can't win when that's what you're getting from your starting pitching. So, and it's not just Smiley. Again, Anderson's been good. Enoa's been great. Everybody else at best has had ups and downs. But I think you look at a guy like Smiley, who I believe was 31 or 32, has some experience in the majors. I think is getting paid a decent amount. You need a little more from him. And it was great to see some momentum in Washington. You hope that helps him turn the corner. But I feel comfortable saying if he goes out and he's removed in the 4th inning, you're going to have a hard time winning this game. So whether it's the impact it has on the bullpen, whether it's taking some of the pressure off the offense, everything starts with starting pitching in Major League Baseball. And it has to start with Drew Smiley tonight.
Well, BJ, it keeps you on schedule, right? I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing about starting. It keeps everything on schedule. Snit got it. People talk about his mismanagement of the bullpen. Well, what happens when it get him off schedule? I was thinking of going to the bullpen, bottom of the 6th, top of the 7th. Oh, Drew Smiley, and I hope it doesn't happen tonight. If he comes out, if he gets pulled in the 4th, that means that everybody's off track now. That means I might have to play. I might have to go to my my bullpen more tonight than I wanted to tonight. Then you talking about Will Smith. I mean, you want guys to go out there and do what they specialize in. We really haven't seen it, and it's not a good thing when everybody's not gelling together. BJ, you keep on talking about Drew Smiley and how many runs he used to giving up. He's gonna have to work through that. If he starts off, a bad first, you got to work through that. I don't know.
But you know what I think that comes down to, Ben, and to me it comes, and this is something Kevin talks about all the time. I think for Smiley tonight, it comes down to throwing strikes, and I don't want to say this, and then have him go out tonight and give up 7 homers with no walks, and kind of look at the situation of he threw strikes. But I think in some ways you can handle it a little better if you just get beat, right? If you throw your best stuff in the strike zone and the other team hits it, I think that's easier to process than if you're just walking guys. And walks, you can give up a solo home run and still be okay. You walk a couple of guys and give up a home run, that's crushing. That's hard to overcome. And I look at Smiley again, last couple of times out. Even in the game against Washington, he still walked 4 guys. In the game against Toronto, where he was really, really bad, he walked 4 guys. Well, he's essentially on double rest now. They backed him up so he wouldn't pitch against the Blue Jays. You've had plenty of time to kind of refocus. This is an important start for him. It really is. Your team's reeling. You need him to be a veteran tonight. And to me, it starts with throwing strikes and not giving out free passes.
Absolutely. Trust your stuff. I mean, and the thing is, BJ, yeah. I mean, you're throwing to a major league hitter. I mean, they're pretty good at recognizing pitches and things of that nature. But when you walking guys, you're not. I mean, guys have even got to be competitive in that. Don't give them, don't give them that free lunch out there, man. But I will say this though. I keep on coming back to the cachet they got with Snit. If Snit comes out to the mound, does Drew Smiley have enough cachet to say no? Like let me work my way through it.
To me, if you're and I mean this with all due respect, but if your ERA is over 6, you're probably not in a position right now to say, I hear you, but. Now, maybe because he is a guy that does have, close to a decade of experience in the league, maybe you look at that more than you do the current results, but you just got to have better play. And again, that's not solely on Drew Smiley. It's the pitching staff as a whole. You mentioned Will Smith. I mean, if the Braves are winning 3-2 tonight in the 9th inning and Smith comes out of the bullpen, and that's a guy that's had a very good career, but if he comes out of the bullpen to close it out, everybody in Braves country is going to be looking around going, okay, how's it going to go? Again, ERA over 5, Minter, ERA over 5. We'll see Shane Green, I assume, in a couple of weeks. Chris Martin's back. Newcomb is a guy that can do a number of different things, but I don't know that there's a lot of comfort when the Braves look around and have to go to the bullpen. I don't really know who you trust right now. I do think you have to be careful with bullpen ERAs because they pitch so few innings that if you give up 2 or 3 earned runs, it really boosts the number up. And Smith, prior to the final game against Toronto had been pretty good. He had been on a good streak, but you always talk about like kickers in the pros in the NFL. If you're a kicker and you miss 2 kicks in a game, it's time. It's time to be looked at. Well, I think the same thing is if you're a closer. If you're a closer and you have a couple of bad outings, it's time for a second look. So I think everybody that pitches for the Braves, maybe outside of Enoa and Anderson, should be feeling kind of different levels of pressure at this point.
Well, I hope they feel it, and I hope they use it the right way. I mean, the only reason why I said what I said about Drew Smiley, BJ, is bigger than him telling Snit, let me work through it. What does it say to the other starting pitchers? They'll be like, look, man, we got to be able to start earning our money. This team is not going to – I don't care what this team has. If we can't make it past the 5th inning, it's over. That means that I ain't even fulfilled my part. That means that somebody got to pick up. It's like what I lack, somebody got to pick that up for me. So people coming in earlier. But I also say this, BJ, what happens when Drew Smiley goes out there lights out? And then we are up 3-2. And then Will Smith is called in and he is able to get that. Hopefully it snowballs. I mean, because the thing is, I look at good teams as can you survive without your best player? Well, your best player is not in the lineup tonight. Getting a win without Ronald Acuna Jr., that's not going to be the remedy for success moving forward. But you want to be able to right the ship. You don't want to put so much pressure on him that when he comes back, that he got to go out there and be himself, just take that load off of him. I'm looking forward to seeing.
Let me ask you this. A couple of points you made there. I mean, how collective is momentum in sports? Because you think if Freddie gets an early home run, does that give Smiley some more confidence? If you see Adrianza stepping in for Acuna get an early hit, does that lift the club? I mean, when you were playing in the NFL, if a defensive end on your team got a couple of sacks, did that boost your kind of confidence and intensity level on the field?
It did because I think too often at times, I mean, you don't want to have like an individual mindset on a team sport. And a lot of times you get caught up in what me. No, you are for the greater collective. So if a defensive end gets 2 sacks and I'm coming up to him saying, hey man, I'm gonna need 2 more for the end of the game, that motivation that I gave out will come back to me later on in the game. We are only as good as each other. I mean, if you play a team sport, it's always gonna be I'm only as good as those guys, those guys around me. So yeah, BJ, momentum is huge because it gets you out of that mindset. Until something good happens, everybody's thinking the same. Oh, here we go again. But then they go a double play. They go a ground out. They go a homer. They go a double. They go a single. But the thing about those pitches is, look at the pitcher when he gets out of it's bases loaded, 1 out. He gets a double play. Look at that emotion. They walking off the diamond. That's what I would hope because it's gonna start with that starting pitch. I mean, BJ, I'm coming around with the starting pitching because every time the Braves don't win, you can go back to who was the starter that day. Who was the starter that day? And I just think that once the starting pitcher becomes more consistent, I think it's going to have, a great effect for the rest of the team because it takes the pressure off of everybody else. Because if you're giving up a bunch of runs, that means now we got to score a bunch of runs compared to, getting ground outs, different things. But I'm looking forward to it. I just think that this Braves team is too talented to be in the position they're in. And you need guys not named Acuna, not named Freeman to get you out of this slump. It can start with a guy like Drew Smiley, and hopefully it'll start tomorrow, BJ, because you start getting these losses, and next thing you know, you 6 games out of first. It's gonna be a long season, no matter how those bats get coming back trying to make some noise.
Can I say something real quick? You say that it's too talented to be doing this. Batting, probably yes. Pitching, I don't think so. I don't think.
Well, hold on a second. How
many years in a row have we said about the Braves pitching? Last year, towards the end of the years when they've gotten better, but guess what? It's still the same Braves with the same pitching.
Well, I think if you end up being the same Braves, that's something that'll be okay, given that you've won 3 straight division titles and almost.
Yeah, you're gonna win the division title, but you're not going to World Series.
But and I hear you that maybe you're looking for the next step, but. You're talking about Soroka when he comes back being elite. I think it's fair to kind of wonder what happened to Fried at the beginning of the year and his injury situation. And I think Charlie Morton has been a disappointment, quite frankly, in terms of his overall resume. But I think when you kind of lined it all up on paper, you felt pretty good about the group. Some guys have underwhelmed. I think it's a big start for Smiley tonight. I think it starts with Smiley. I agree with Ben. It's amazing what a good start will do for the bullpen and for the offense. And with no Acuna, we'll see if he's back, this weekend. But with no Acuna, you need Smiley to get it going. Big series. The Mets coming up next week. Big series tonight. starts tonight in Milwaukee. We'll come back, talk some ACC football, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good Friday afternoon to you. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. And you talk about college football storylines for the upcoming season. You got to look at these ACC quarterbacks. And Ben, what's amazing about this group is you obviously had Trevor Lawrence just go number 1 overall in the draft to Jacksonville, of course. And you still have an incredible amount of talent returning. I believe PFF, their top 10 returning quarterbacks, the ACC was the only league with 3. When you talk about De'Aaron King, when you talk about DJ Uiagalelei, and then Sam Howell there, I believe at number 2. And then you have some other guys that are really exciting players potentially on the rise in the ACC. Is the ACC kind of the quarterback conference right now?
Absolutely, BJ. And the whole thing about it is, I mean, obviously number 1 coming back this year is not in the ACC. That's going to be Spencer Rattler. But we talk so much about, DJU and what he's going to do for Clemson. We talk about what De'Aaron King, if he comes back healthy for Miami. We don't give enough credit to Sam Howell. I mean, Sam Howell has put up some big time numbers. I mean, listen, I was looking up what Sam Howell did as a freshman. I was looking for other true freshmen. He was in there by himself. Nobody has done what he has done. And I know last year, a disappointing loss against Florida State. You look at what they was able to do against Miami. Sam Howell's as good as advertised. I don't know where this boy come from in the state of Carolina, but he has big time talent. And for North Carolina to do what they want to do, it's gonna be behind the arm of Sam Howell. I mean, BJ, you already know. You saw him against Notre Dame last year. Big time talent. He's gonna keep that keep that standard of quarterback in the Clemson at a high level. And look, I felt bad for De'Aaron King last year. I mean, to go down with the ACL at the end of the year, I mean, more than lived up to it. Manny Diaz should be thanking his lucky stars that that De'Aaron King decided to take his talents to South Beach and not keep him in Houston. It's going to come down to his health, BJ, because I mean he's not the biggest guy, very very agile, can throw the football, dual threat. But yes, the ACC is leading the way right now. I mean, we look back at the SEC, a year or so removed from having Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, and you talking about Tua Tagovailoa, you talking about Felipe Franks. Now you move over to the ACC, these guys are leading the way, and they're doing it in pro-style offense. Everybody talking about the spread. No, Sam Howell, they're making some big-time throws. Now, it's going to be hard to replace Newsome and Daz Newsome and them boys and them two-headed monster at running back. But, yes, De'Aaron, DJU, Sam Howell, and some other – and I'm pretty sure by the end of the year, BJ, we'll have some more guys added to that list. I mean, keep your eye on those Sims, Georgia Tech, man. I mean, true freshman last year, got a chance to make some noise this year, yeah, but I think the start of the class, even though I like DJU and De'Aaron, it's got to be Sam Howell.
Yeah, and you're right about how, sometimes when you come in and you're a star right away as a true freshman, you kind of take for granted how good some of the production is. As a true freshman, and keep in mind, he was joining a team that was not good the year before he got there. Sam Howell, as a true freshman, 38 touchdowns passing, a 38-7 touchdown to interception ratio. That is incredibly impressive. He has 68 passing touchdowns through 2 seasons. And, you like to see improvement from guys, even if they're really good right away. As a freshman, Sam Howell completed 61% of his passes. As a sophomore, 68%. As a freshman, Sam Howell, 8.6 yards per pass attempt. As a sophomore, 10.3. So he's becoming more accurate. He's throwing the ball downfield with more proficiency. The touchdowns are still there. Protects the football for the most part. I mean, this guy, Ben, is he capable of Carolina, leading them into a top 10 type role in the polls?
You would hope so. I mean, he's going through his growing pains. I mean, people talking about, hey, why is old Mac Jones coming back to USC? Because I got a quarterback that can get me there. That's why ain't nobody saying anything to old Urban Meyer coming back, going to the NFL, getting him his guy. But, yeah, BJ, I think it's going to come down to North Carolina seems to play up, to big-time competition. But you see but Florida State kind of showed a flaw in their system, too. They're a team to where, they think that because they got Sam Howell, they can battle back. Well, it's going to come down to his mindset. He knows it's going to all be on him. I think it's kind of all been on him since he's been there. But BJ, 38 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Could you imagine? I mean, my goodness. I mean, true freshmen doing that kind of stuff. So you see why these coaches be going crazy. But yeah, I think he has it in him, BJ. But I got to see it because, as Kevin said, the ACC will ACC itself, and North Carolina lose to a team that's not as talented as them. But I think he's kind of going through it a little bit. Starting as a true freshman, I mean, to go from 8.6 to well over 10 yards, per attempt. That's, 61% to 68%. So he did make that sophomore leap, but he's not going to have that running game this year. So are they going to put more on him in the passing game? But if anybody can do it, Sam Howell can do it. And like I said, we're going to hear a lot about him. The same way people's going crazy over the big arm of Trevor Lawrence this year, or, Zach Wilson or Trey Lance. This guy's going to be the headliner. And I know you got talent all around college football this year. I think it's going to be all about Sam Howell because he's been doing it as a true freshman. Everybody else got to come into their own. I think he's just ready to show the world. I don't want to have to share the spotlight with Trevor Lawrence. He's just going to have to share it with DJU.
And King has a remarkable resume, and you hope he's 100% healthy, ready to go. Miami obviously opens up with Alabama, but King has 108 career touchdowns, and he's done that obviously throwing the ball, one of the best passers in the country, running the ball, and early in his career at Houston played wide receiver and made some plays there as well. Just an incredible talent, incredible player. I'm like you. I think it's good for college football that you have Miami potentially, as kind of a national player with a star quarterback. And King last year, 23 passing touchdowns, just 5 interceptions. So protecting the football, making plays, but also protecting the football. He's a guy that is as good as it gets around the country.
Yeah, D'Eriq King, man, it's going to come down to his health. You know what he's able to do, BJ. You've seen the fact that, what he did for that offense. And I will say this. I know that Miami runs out in the smoke. The young man took his talents to Miami, a team that's we've been talking about getting back. Listen, let me say this right now. They will never be what they once were. I got a chance to play against some of those, arguably the greatest team in college football. But when you look at what he did, not just for the offense, but for the team, once again, quarterbacks keep everything on schedule. Not just keeping you ahead of the chain, not just, converting third downs to touchdowns, but he makes the whole team better. And this is a young man who's only been there a year. Manny Diaz gets to walk around. He gets to walk around Miami, not trying to hide from people because he's actually going out there getting it done. But just like North Carolina, BJ, do Miami really want that expectation of getting back to being potentially one of the Final Four teams standing? They got a shot to do it. I think they're going to have to protect D'Eriq King a little more this year. When you come off an injury, I know everybody wants to see, can he get back to what he once was? They're going to have to call a little less, run plays for him. But to take away his legs now is going to really take away a big part of his game. He is nice running the football. Got to learn how to slide them more. But, yeah, I am intrigued to see how D'Eriq King comes off an injury and helps that Miami Hurricanes team try to get back to their dominant ways.
Obviously, expectations high for DJ Uiagalelei at Clemson. Check this out. One start last year, because I know a lot of people go, why are the expectations so high for DJ? One start last year in a top 5 game. I know they lost, but you played on the road against a top 5 team. You completed 29 of 44 passes for 439 yards and 2 touchdowns. You were extraordinary. What are your expectations for DJU?
Take quarterback into the next level. I know, BJ, we saying, look, Taj, Deshaun, Kelly, Trevor, DJ. And he's ready. Because the thing is, it's not that he did what he did, BJ. It's who he did it against. Did it against Notre Dame. And once again, if it's up to him, they win the game. He don't play defense. Dabo Swinney got something going. The young man with the hard last name to pronounce, I'm not even going to butcher it, DJ. I'm just going to call him DJU for the whole season, BJ. But if you Clemson, you think they're going to pick up where you left off. If you Justin Ross, oh, my God, you can't wait to get out there with him. And if you are in the ACC and play defense, good luck. Because DJU and those offensive weapons, we ain't even got to the running game. I think DJU, he's not going to be a star, BJ. His name is already in the Heisman watch list, and rightfully so. Only saw him one time last year. And if the defense just step up, they go undefeated in the regular season.
DJU, I thought you were talking about BJ's old man football stats. I could have swore that's what you guys were talking about.
Very similar playmakers throwing the ball downfield. Yes, very similar. One more guy I wanted to ask you about, Ben, and one of the remarkable stories in college football, Mackenzie Milton, who had a terrible injury. You didn't know if he was ever going to play again, and it was very serious there. He's at Florida State as a grad transfer. In 2017, he was second in the country in passer rating. The only player who had a better passer rating than Milton in 2017 was Baker Mayfield, and he won the Heisman Trophy. So Milton has gone undefeated. Milton has won big games. He's been an All-American. It's been a couple of years since we've seen him off of the big injury. How do you know what we're going to get out of McKenzie Milton, who I know a lot of people are rooting for there at Florida State?
He's going to be the most intriguing player in college football this year, not just because of what he's coming off of or dealing with, BJ, but the team he chose. I always look at where players go when they want to move on. I mean, when players go to like smaller schools, one, they're doing it so they can get away from that limelight, get away from the feedback and the criticism. No, BJ, he loves the state of Florida. Look, he's going from Central Florida to the Panhandle, and he's saying, I want to be able to go out there and play in the ACC. Think about it, but we're talking about DJU, talking about De'Aaron King. We were talking about Sam Howell. Well, he says, look, last time I checked, I'm one quarterback of the big three. Okay, we got Emory in Florida. We got De'Aaron down there in Miami. Well, I'm the third part of that triangle. I'm rooting for him. I'm not rooting for him for one Saturday of the year, but I am rooting for him as a football player because, I mean, BJ, I didn't think he was going to ever play football again. I mean, they stopped showing it on TV, but he battled back, battle tested, and dare I say, I mean, the young man that's at UCF right now is pretty good too, even though I know we're talking about ACC quarterbacks, but I am rooting for McKenzie Milton because, I mean, he's why we root. He's why we watch college football and, got a little charisma to him too. I keep going back to the post-game press conference, BJ, after the spring game, they call it the wrong colors. He's like, no, this is Garnet. I'm going to need y'all to, act like but yeah, I think McKenzie Milton, if they can protect him, BJ, he gonna throw the football. Florida State gonna have athletes at the wide receiver position. We talking about DJU and Sam Howell, De'Aaron King. Could we come out of this season talking about McKenzie Milton?
We'll come back. We'll hear from Marcus Murphy, signed by the Atlanta Falcons. Really good player out of Mississippi State. Tragically lost his mom, has a child with some health complications. We'll hear from him next, or reshare an interview we had earlier in the week. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Glad to have you back here with us, 3 and Out on a Friday afternoon. Hope you're doing well. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. Earlier this week, we had a chance to chat with a signee of the Atlanta Falcons, a big-time playmaker out of Mississippi State, Marcus Murphy, and get some powerful perspective from him as he gets ready to start his pro football career.
Show, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How y'all guys doing?
Hey, we are doing fantastic. Really appreciate you coming on and joining us. The Atlanta Falcons. I know folks talk about if you don't go in the late round, undrafted free agent's a good choice because you get to choose in a lot of respects where to go. What was attractive to you about Atlanta, and what made you sign a contract with the Falcons?
Well, first and foremost, it's kind of right down the road from Mississippi. It's only 4.5 hours away. I'm close enough home to, being able to see my kids and be able to, do the thing that I love to do, is play football and spend my time with my family. So that was a plus for me, is to, still be around and be close to home so my family can come up and watch the games, or I get the best opportunity for my family and, to make some of myself.
Talk about your career at Mississippi State. Obviously, you're a guy with a lot of talent, 6'1", over 200 pounds. What type of player are you, and what type of skill set are you bringing to the Falcons?
I'm a dynamic player, man. I make big time plays, man. I try to stay consistent on and off the field, during practice and during the game. What I'm trying to contribute with the Falcons is hope to come in and contribute on special teams and help win a Super Bowl.
And Marcus, when you look at the fact that, as you mentioned, I mean, you already, being a father, how much more that makes, determine the type of player you are. Most of the time when you got guys coming out of college that already have, wives, or already have kids, they tend to play the game of football a little bit different.
Oh, yeah, man, no doubt. I can speak for a lot of fathers, man. Having kids that look up to you, yeah, I think it sets a different type of fire up under you, man. It brings a lot of passion up out of your heart. It gives you a different desire just to grind and have a different work ethic.
What did the Falcons kind of told you about what to expect coming into camp, about what they're going to look for from you about making this team?
It haven't been too much. I know I got to go in with a level head and bring a lot of consistency with my talent, knowing the play, knowing the playbook, being able to transition from the college level to the pros. I know the game speed gonna be a lot faster than what it was, but I'm up for the task and I'm ready to put on the show.
What's your perspective right now? Obviously going through the pre-draft process, obviously getting ready for this opportunity to have camp coming up, to be a guy that has a lot of talent, a lot of potential. What's your perspective and mindset right now as you get ready to start your pro career?
I feel like my mindset is all or nothing. God blessed me to be in this position, to have this opportunity. Is all on me, to take advantage of everything they put in front of me and put on the table. And my mindset is, again, all or nothing. I got to go make it happen.
And Marcus, I mean, for those who don't know, your son Mason, he suffers from a rare genetic disorder that forces him to, receive blood transplants every 6 months, along with other therapies in between. I mean, what is it going to mean for you to make this team, being in a city like Atlanta, to be able to do for your son in a way you've never been able to this point?
Man, I know it's going to mean the most, to him and to my family. With him going through the process that he's going through, man, I look up to him. He's a young man. He's 3, about to be 4 years old. He never complained about anything he's been through. He never looked back on it. He never looked down on himself. He's always happy, always smiling. Got the highest energy in the room, man. So I kind of feed off him, and I'm knowing me going out there making the team and doing what I do best for him, gonna make him happy overall.
And I know that part of 2020, you opted out there at Mississippi State for the last portion of the season due to concerns over that. Just speak to that bond that you and him have, and talk about that decision, which sounds like wasn't much of a decision to make at the end of the day. Obviously, a dad and his son.
Yeah, that decision, man, probably the hardest decision I had to make, other than picking a school, man, because it was life changing. I had to make a decision based off not how I felt, not my position, but I had to make a decision based off his position and based around his life. I don't regret no decision I made. I feel like I made the best decision to opt out during the circumstance of what was going on in 2020 due to COVID. I didn't want to put him at any risk of catching COVID or putting my family at any risk of catching COVID. So I made the decision just to opt out. I had a level head on what decision I was going to make, and I went with it. It was a lot of negative say so or positive say so. I'm a man before anything, and I'm a father, so I have to make decisions, based off my kids.
And Marcus, just talk about that motivation of having your family. You've referenced a couple of times your son, his situation. Just talk about that motivation and how much you think about it and kind of use it as a part of your work and your grind every day.
Man, I use it as my grind, and my whole life, my motto has been feed the family, man. I look up to my family. My family depends on me most times. I lost my mom. She was my biggest supporter. I always wanted to grow up and, put her in a big house or get her dream car or, being able to take care of her on my own. So I pride on family, man. I live by family, loyalty and all that. So that's what I stand on. That's what I work for and put all my grind into it so I can be able to put my family in the best position possible.
And Marcus, obviously, the 4th overall pick, for the Falcons, Kyle Pitts, a guy that's definitely going to be able to make a lot of plays this year. You played against a young Kyle Pitts back in 2018. I mean, how much are you looking forward to training camp, and how much you looking forward to staring at him saying, "Look, man, ain't gonna be no easy wins out here today."
Oh man, I know it's gonna be a task with him, man. He gonna get me better. I'm gonna try to do my best to get him better. But I'm looking forward to meeting everybody and definitely lining up against him at practice, man, to get the best work possible.
Now, Marcus, man, I mean, outside of you, I know how it is, y'all Mississippi State DBs. And I know how you guys go about y'all business. How much do you dislike Ole Miss players, and what is that Egg Bowl really like, man?
Oh man, it's like two guys in the phone booth fighting over that one last call. So who's gonna get that one last call, for the rest of their life, man? And that's how hard we play the game when we play against Ole Miss. It ain't. I don't hate them, but on the field I dislike them. Off the field, I don't got nothing but love for them because I got a few guys over there that I'm really close with, and I got a cousin that plays Jacquez Jones. So it ain't no hate in my heart, but when we on the field, it's all or nothing. I got to take that last phone call.
Marcus Murphy joining us here on 3 and Out, undrafted free agent out of Mississippi State with the Atlanta Falcons. And Marcus, Ben mentioned a little bit going up against Kyle Pitts, playing safety there at Mississippi State. Obviously, you've seen a number of dudes up close and personal who are now in the National Football League. Just speak to that kind of on-the-job training in the SEC, facing essentially NFL dudes in college.
Oh, yeah, man. I feel like it'll kind of be sort of the same, man. You're seeing the same guys in the SEC doing the same thing in the NFL, like Jerry Jeudy, all them guys. What you see on film is what you'll get directly if you lined up across them guys. Them guys, they hungry, they ready for it and everything else. So, I'm mentally prepared and physically prepared to go against the best so I can perform my best.
Where do you feel like you're at your best on the field? I know in today's game, safeties do a number of different things. You have some safeties who are closer to the line, some safeties in coverage. You were a complete safety, obviously, at Mississippi State. But where do you feel like you're at your best?
I feel like I'm at my best when I'm covering, man. I pride on covering. I love covering. You got to win your one-on-one. Shout out to Coach Washington, the safety coach, and Coach Hughes, man. They always proud on winning your one-on-one rep. You'll win more ball games. If a lot of times they say safety can't cover this and that. Well, I bet try to show them wrong, man.
And Marcus, I mean, even sticking with that notion, when you talk about a position that's really, defining like what guys can do on the defense. I mean, a big time safety make it to where the other 10 guys on the field can kind of go out there and kind of run those exotic defenses. You talk about your cover ability, but I got to ask you, do you rather have a pick six or do you rather have a goal line stand, you and that running back one-on-one and you smack him and y'all get off the field?
I don't want to be greedy, man. I don't know. That's a hard question. You put me in a bind then. Definitely, if it's different situations to where we need a touchdown, I'll take a pick six. But if we need the goal line stand, I'm going to go with the goal line stand.
Marcus Murphy, our guest here on 3 Out. Marcus, really appreciate the time. Best of luck with you with the Atlanta Falcons. And again, thanks so much.
I appreciate it, man.
We appreciate Marcus Murphy coming on the program out of Mississippi State, signing with the Falcons, and powerful perspective. Obviously, wish he and his family the best moving forward. We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Ben, we made it through the day without Kevin, and along the way, we even talked about biscuits and gravy without him and talked Braves baseball without him. Pretty remarkable, but a big weekend, Braves and Brewers tonight, Saturday, and Sunday. We'll have pregame coverage in about an hour, and the Atlanta Hawks, currently 4th in the East by a half game, have one more game. So they can obviously finish 4th with some losses from other teams. But if the Hawks beat the Houston Rockets, who are not good this year, if they can win on Sunday, they will host a first-round playoff series, last game of the regular season for the Hawks on Sunday.
Shout out to Coach Nate McMillan, BJ. I mean, when you start looking at this Hawks team that's in a very, very, very competitive Eastern Division that everybody thought was going to be down when LeBron left, no matter where they end up, I'm proud of them. But BJ, if they can go from not even being considered a playoff contender to hosting a playoff series in that 4th spot, bring on them Knicks, man. Ain't nobody scared of them Knickerbockers. But shout out to Coach Nate McMillan, shout out to Trae Young, Clint Capella, Bogdanovich, all those boys, man. Herter, Collins. BJ, did I say they tired of having to answer questions about the Braves and the Falcons? We play a little basketball with the Hawks too. Shout out to them young Hawks.
Is Nate McMillan a guaranteed hire now? Is he a guaranteed hire now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, done a remarkable job. And I think you're talking about a team that has exceeded expectations, clearly, regardless of what happens. You're in the playoffs. I want to be clear. You're in the playoffs. But one game left in the regular season, half game lead over Miami and New York. So if you win on Sunday against a Rockets team that I think has over 50 losses, the Rockets do this year, this is not a good Rockets team. You will be in that 4th spot and will host a first-round playoff series. Braves and Mets coming up next week. That's a huge series. I know Kevin will have a lot of thoughts on that. But before we get to that, you got to get right against the Brewers. Atlanta 4 games out of first place in the East, 3 games under 500 for the season. And you have Drew Smyly on the mound tonight. Ben, quickly, any thoughts on this weekend for the Braves? I
just think, BJ, they got to get a win just for the morale of the team. Drew Smyly, I hope he gets a big dub, come this weekend. Because BJ, like I said, it doesn't look good if they start looking at they can't get back to their winning ways.
Got to get some dubs, and Braves and Brewers, I think first pitch is 8:10 tonight, a little bit later than normal. But we'll see you on Monday. We'll have Kevin back, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, ESPNCoastal.com.